When I was 18 years old, I came up from my hometown of Orange County to Los Angeles, and I got into the adult film industry. I went on to have a 20-year career in the adult film industry and a very pretty high-profile career in that industry. And what happened for me was I had a lifestyle that surrounded and supported the getting and using and having more and more drugs. And I had a lot of people around me that supported and encouraged that behavior because it allowed them to continue to make money off of me and the persona that I had in this industry. What happened for me was it not only stopped working for me, but my alcoholism became my drug addiction. And my drug addiction continued until it started to kill me. I had completely lost control of my ability of choice behind drugs and alcohol. For me, it always started with a drink. I don't do drugs unless I have a drink and I get my inhibitions out. But for me, it sort of boils down to I was the kind of girl that did what normal people would never think of doing. And I was the first one out the door to do it. Once I took a drink, it was like, woo, let's party. Let's score some Coke. Let's, take off all our clothes and let's just be crazy. Which was really great back in the 80s when everybody else was doing it too. But sooner or later, it had the best of me, and I decided that I no longer had a use for it. And what happened was, when I started to think about quitting, I realized that I was absolutely powerless to do so. I had formed a habit that was out to kill me, and I was powerless to stop myself. I believe that I was not made a drug addict, alcoholic because of the adult industry. What I believe is, wholeheartedly, is that I was attracted to the adult industry because of my alcoholism, because part of my disease is that I have an incredible need for validation, and I was able to find that in the adult industry. And sex addiction is prevalent in the adult industry. Now, as far as alcoholism and being a drug addict, for me, the kind of drug addict alcoholic I am is I couldn't get out of bed in the morning and brush my hair at the end of my using without taking a drink. So of course I'd have to take a drink or a hit or a toke or whatever in order to get up in front of a camera and have sex with another person and be filmed doing it. It was just all part of the idea. Did I intend to become an addict? No. I didn't realize I was an addict, and most people don't, until they try to stop using. And once you put the alcohol or drugs down, that's when I think you realize, oh my God, there's a problem here. When I try to stop, this is what happens for me. That's what recovery is about, is identifying with the powerlessness. I know a lot of people in the adult industry who are sober. When I first got sober, I continued to work in the adult industry for a time. What happened for me was, in the natural course of recovery, we change by doing our inventories, by growing up in recovery. We just begin to change. And what was important to me on a daily basis, what I got, I needed something. My life is about, I want something to get out of bed too, that I'm, really excited about. And for me, I had done the adult business. I had done a lot of work in it. I had had a lot of fame and success. I wanted to do something that I wanted to get out of bed in the morning to do. And the more I worked with people in the recovery industry, that was where my focus just went naturally. After I had been sober many years, I realized that it was time for me to transition out of my work in the adult business and, go back into the real world. And that was really difficult for me. It was difficult for me on a lot of levels because when I came into the mother program, Alcoholics Anonymous, I was very recognizable from being this actress in adult films. And because there's a lot of sex addiction in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was being recognized as this persona that I had created. And it made it very difficult for me to come in and remove my mask and just be who I really was, which was just a scared kid who needed help. And there were often times when I turned to certain people and I was manipulated, by people who had a lot of time. So at some point I made it my focus to be able to really reach out and be there for women and men and people in recovery who were able to identify with my experience so that I could give them what they need. Part of working in recovery, being able to get sober, is that we need to do an inventory, and we need to be able to be completely, fearlessly, and thoroughly honest with somebody about everything that we've done. And that can be very frightening when you've had a career history in the types of industry that I had, because people don't understand. So I've done a lot of work in that area, and I do work with as a sober companion today with people who who have the same problems that I've experienced, and who want recovery, and it's been pretty successful. I was afforded the opportunity because of my history, my experience with being able to work with certain types of people who had my same story or similar stories, and who would be comfortable, because one of the key components in being able to surrender is that we can trust another human being. And that's what a sober companion can provide to somebody who's going through treatment, is that they can focus on the detox because they're not worried about what is being judged about whatever else is going on in their life at that moment. There are people who go through detox that are continuing to work in the adult industry, and that's really great. The problem is, if you're drinking or using and you don't have a problem and you like what you're doing, it's not my business. But if you're drinking and using or involved in something that you want to get out of and you can't, and you feel powerless over it, and you want my help, then that's my business. Once you get sober with alcohol, your disease is going to move sideways. And I have experienced all sorts of other addictions and character defects that came up after I was sober, my eating, and because the disease will move sideways. And if you're not acting out in active addiction, in your alcoholism, it'll move into drug addiction, it'll move into, overeating, it'll move into sex addiction, where a person who maybe was not a compulsive sex addict before they got sober suddenly finds themselves acting out in something they don't understand, and they don't know why in sobriety. And there's a lot of shame-based thinking behind that, and sometimes it can be very frightening to say, oh my God, I'm so many years sober and I'm acting out in active sex addiction, and people want to hide it. That's one of the things for me, was that there was a lot of things that I was afraid to be open in discussion about, and you cannot get recovery without being able to be open about these things.